Time of the and today we are talking about redirects. Kind of what are they, why you should use them, and why they're super important for your website in your all your marketing. And to do that today, I'm speaking to you, Phelan Lewis from Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I'm Greg McKinnon with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Awesome. And so I think today this is a topic you brought up, but I think we did touch on this a little bit when we were talking about error messages because they're kind
Yeah,
of interrelated. But I think we were
yeah.
gonna do a
Coming
deeper
up with
dive.
my coming up with my blog, I was like, why did I put this one right after the errors? Because we kind of just touched on a bunch of it, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but there's also some fun stuff of like we were talking about like the 302 redirects, and when we kind of you and I both independently dug into it, I ran into it with a client of like a use case for a 302, which is the temporary redirects.
Hmm.
And so why we would do that, because both of us are kind of like, oh, this seems kind of stupid. Then we looked into it, and there's like, oh, that's kind of a cool use case. So like for myself, it was a client that had e-commerce and an in-store, like they had a brick and mortar location as well. And so they
Hmm.
would, sometimes run out of products, but they knew they were going to be getting more next month. So it's just a temporary redirect. So they're just
Hmm.
telling Google like, oh, we're out of this, there'll be more coming. And so, to Google, that makes a lot of sense because it's like, oh, this page isn't totally going away. It's just going to come back, in a couple weeks. And so they'll still have a, just check on it and then see how it's going. First, it's like, page has gone away. It's never coming
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, so you know how for the longest time, if companies that I've worked with have had promotions or anything going on in their business, sometimes we've created a separate landing page for whatever specific that they're trying to plug at that time or sell or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And it never really occurred to me because basically, when you put out things, you're like directing everybody to that specific landing page for that campaign that you've got going on. But it never really occurred to me that that page also probably has its own product page on their website, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that would be one of the things that you could do is instead of having the landing page and your normal product page for whatever that product or service is, you could put in that 302 redirect on that so that all traffic goes to this marketing campaign landing page you've got set up, instead of splitting up your traffic between people that just happen to hit that page on your site for the normal product, and the campaign specific campaign landing page that you've created, and then remove it when your campaign is done, and that flows all of your traffic that was going to go to that other page, your normal page, to that landing page for that marketing purpose.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense as well. And it just dawned on me as you were explaining that. I guess you could also do multiple products as well. So you could have like maybe you're doing like a big bundle sale, and it's like, oh no, you're going to go to the once a year bundle page, and so because of that, they can get redirected there from the two like product pages that you are bundling, or what.
Mhm.
I'm just using an example. The other one that came to mind when you were explaining it a little bit was that we could have as well as like temporarily change like the URL and the whole look of the page. Like it's not even necessarily a new page, but maybe you've done a big update and you've updated the URL and the page title, meta description, and so it looks like it's a brand new page. But really, what you've done is you updated it for like I don't know, like your summer sale, and it has like summer sale whatever product name is, and then so it's not it's temporary in the sense that you don't want to it's the sales temporary, but the product page is going to go back, and then like so Google still maps out your URLs correctly from where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it gets you an easy way to direct people to the page that you want specifically, but not lose any of that organic placement or authority with the current page that Google knows because it has seen this that you're gonna go back to it. So it just doesn't.
Mm.
It basically just doesn't do anything with it. It ignores it because it knows that it's gonna come back at some point.
Yeah, and I think that it also helps with Google of like knowing the flow of your website, right? You don't want that hard breaks. Like Google, it's an algorithm is trying to figure out how to lay us out all in context. And if we make it easy, that it's like, oh no, so we're going to temporarily be over here and like that, so they know kind of how all these things flow together. I think Google's always appreciative of that part of it as well.
Yeah, we kind of jumped into the 302 temporary redirects there and skipped over the 301s because I think 302s, now that I know a lot more about them,
Yeah,
I kind of find them more interesting, and I'm like, find myself looking for how can I use this now? Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I really want to use it. But
Oh,
the
I just wanted
301, go ahead.
I just want to say sorry about the 301 302 redirects. One other thing that I found that's kind of annoying, but it's the fact that Shopify is like 20 years old and changing this now is going to be hard, but they don't allow you to do 301 redirects, or you're only allowed to do 301 redirects. 302s just weren't written into any of the software protocols.
Right.
And so just one thing to keep in mind if you do have a Shopify store and you're like, why can't I set up a 302? It's by default. It's just kind of the way their system was. You have a 20-year-old system and there's so many people on the platform that changing something like that might break a lot of their website. So I understand, back in 2004, 2006, when they were first building this, that they weren't really thinking, oh, we should have all these, make sure all this is set up. So just one thing, it was a quick aside that I wanted to throw in there.
Well, if the infrastructure is there for 301s, they shouldn't have too difficult a time implementing 302s, you would think. I'm sure eventually they're probably looking at doing that.
Yeah, from my understanding, having like I got to peek at the code base for how Shopify operates,
Mhm.
and it's a lot of the fact that it's like a mono, like each individual store is like its own instance of the Shopify, and so it's got a bunch of just weird stuff of like being a monolith code base as well, that it's like it, and the way that the Ruby on Rails was off, the way they customized it off the get-go, it just, there's some weird things with like making changes about URL structures is kind of weird. And it's my understanding from talking to some of the guys that work on it, the back end, that things that seem simple, but because there's so many instances, things can get really weird really quickly. And so they've tried to make changes to like how the URL shaped and all that stuff, and it's just, it causes a lot more headaches than you would expect when you're, because of the way they've done the code base. And
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
sometimes they're just like, is the juice worth the squeeze? And they're kind of just, think of it as a settled issue, and they're kind of like, just, we can't do that. Okay, well, let's just move on with new apps and like extending the functionality now.
Yeah, I get that because the platform we built at my first business was a platform much like Shopify was, where it was one code base, but you could have multiple customers all on that same code base with
Mm,
separate sites. So making a change to that one application does affect every site on the platform. And
yeah,
yeah, when you it kind of rang a bell in my head thinking back
just a
when I was still at
PTSD.
that
You're
business
likely,
of some of the small things that we were like, oh, we'll just do that, and we were like, oh crap.
yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of those like wooden puzzle pieces where you push one and it like put like you're trying to like move them all around, and like you just like, okay, now I've got this here. Okay, but now this has been affected by that, and you're like, it's like this like Rube Goldberg machine kind of situation that you got going on. So
Yeah, I don't want to get too off topic there, but I didn't ever think of Shopify in that way. But they're really like a shared host, right? Like
yeah,
it's one platform with multiple clients all on the same platform, like
yeah,
sharing the same platform itself. So,
yeah, as well. And then just on top of that is that they also have apps that all have to integrate with their system. So they've got a lot of like people that they need to kind of coordinate with, and so it's
mhm.
definitely It's the same as like WordPress, right? People always complain that WordPress has all these old things and old systems in it, and it's just a function of it was 20 years ago that they started this, and now we know more about how you would set it up from scratch. But the problem is like it's now a legacy system, and so making
Mhm.
big sweeping changes is difficult because it can break a third of the internet, and that's a big thing that they have to contend with. And so I yeah, I know we've gone a little far afield, but I think it does matter to like why are these things set up this way, and it kind of points back to that, we're dealing with the end of it.
Yeah, so let's get back on track
Yeah.
here and skip back to the 301 redirects, which are permanent redirects. And for anybody who is not fully aware of what 301 redirects are, is basically it's a way to permanently redirect from an old page on your website to a new page on your website if you are rebuilding that page, or rebuilding your website, or whatever it is, for SEO purposes, and usability, because nobody likes hitting a 404 page, is
No.
to throw in a 301 redirect of what that old page URL used to be to the new page that you've built in your site.
Yeah, exactly. A good place if you're ever wondering, like, rather than you just poking around, what are the 404s that are on my website? What we use is Search Console. Search Console is really good at telling you that we scanned your page again. You used to have a page that was called, Meet the Team, and now it's but they don't know. They just know it's broken, and so you go to the in coverage and then index, and on the left hand side, and that'll tell you number of 404s, soft 404s, 500s, anything like that. So it's a really Search Console is a really good tool for that
Mm-hmm.
part. I know, just quick plug, Pip next week is going to be doing a YouTube live all about Search Console, and so I think that there'll be some coverage in there about that. So stay tuned.
Very cool. So yeah, no, we'll go over maybe 301 redirects a little bit more further in, to the episode. There's two other redirects that are not commonly used, or at least not commonly used for people who just have a basic websites.
Mm-hmm.
One is a meta refresh redirect, and what a meta refresh redirect is, you can put a meta tag in the header of your website that will refresh that page that you've landed on to another page that you'd prefer them go to.
Hmm.
I never thought of these as like the same as a 301 redirects, but I guess they kind of do replace, or another option for 301 and 302, because they basically function the same way. It basically will land on that page and instantly redirect you to another URL that you want them to go to. People typically do the meta refresh directs if they don't have access to their server, or have a way to create proper 301 or 302 redirects. And maybe they have access to just like throw that tag into their HTML so the page redirects.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's not a ton of use cases for it, unless you don't have access to create 301 or 302 redirects.
Yeah. The only so so just going off that, I think that the biggest difference between what's the 301 and the meta rewrite is who's doing the work of the redirect. So if it's the 301, then it's a server side. So you've called to the server and said, I want to get this URL. And then the server says back to them, oh, you mean this URL. So it's like the client, like the browser hasn't done any work. It's just been, it just redirects on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's my understanding. Whereas like the meta redirect is more like your browser gets a signal, and in like the signal that it's getting, there's a little thing that says, hey, actually we want you to go over here. and so for
Yeah,
the client
it's
to
actually a double page load, right? Because the
yeah
meta refresh happens on the page that you don't want them to go to anymore and directs you to the new page. So that page does start to load, and as soon as it hits that meta tag, it
yeah
will then immediately just go to that other page. Back in the day when things were slower, you could actually see the page start to render and then kind of like flip to the page that you actually wanted it to go to.
yeah
That was always fun. I used to use these a lot when I did Flash. Um,
oh wow that's going back
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean this is going back to early mid 2000
yeah
definitely. And a lot of the time there were the phase when everybody was doing these intros for like 10, 15, 20 seconds, whatever. Um, that sometimes you would need a refresh in there if you wanted to skip it, or after it was over, if there wasn't a call in the or something worked into your flash that automatically sent you, you could put a meta refresh on the page that was delayed after 15 seconds or something.
yeah
Or if it was just a page that wasn't Flash, but you wanted this page to come up with something, but then immediately send them somewhere else, that was the way you did it, a meta refresh, right? Like, so a page
hmm
would load, you'd have this message or your logo, like, thanks for visiting us. And like
yeah
after 5 or 10 seconds, the page just automatically sends them to the the actual homepage or something to make it that this was the way to make websites fancy back in the day.
yeah I was just thinking like man it's just like quick aside, it reminds me of this website called Most Annoying JavaScript, something like that. And it's a
Yeah.
guy decided to find every weird feature that of JavaScript, and it basically made makes for a very annoying page. But yeah, it just reminds me of yeah those old like what we used to think web development was like back in the day compared to like now, where it's a lot more standardized.
Yeah. And then, so moving on to the last one is JavaScript redirects. I've not ever really used JavaScript redirects. I'm assuming they have their main purposes, but essentially they do the same thing, but it's executed on the client side,
Hmm
and not on the server side, much like the meta refresh is.
Yeah.
Have you come across JavaScript
Yes.
redirects much?
Yeah. I did, but I didn't know that that's what they were using until I read the description. I was like, oh, that was Google Optimize, where it did A/B testing on landing pages, and so you would change like a headline or something like that, and so it would use JavaScript to just at the last second go, oh, okay, it was really good with Google Ads because you could have specific campaigns or specific ad groups that they
Yeah.
would see a different landing page, or a slightly different landing page text, or maybe an image, coupon code, there's stuff like that.
Hmm.
So there was a really cool use case. The other one that was cool from the Google Optimize is you could also do UTM parameter. So you could have the medium, and you set the medium so you could have email marketing. And like they click on the email, they come to the landing page, and they see the little coupon code, whereas no one else would because it would have had the UTM parameter. So there were some cool like marketing use cases of A/B testing was a big one, and yeah, like personalization, or yeah, that extra bit that you could have.
Yeah, the JavaScript redirects, I guess, would be things that people don't aren't even aware are being
Hmm
used to do certain functions on the site, like you mentioned, and they're I never even thought that they would be used as well for that A/B testing. I never really thought about how A/B testing works. It's just like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, they'll serve one, then they'll serve the other. Like,
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
really think about behind the scenes how they're actually accomplishing that, but it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
The other thing JavaScript redirects might be doing are if you're coming from a certain location, certain
yeah,
country. They might have those things in there to send you to that specific country's website, for instance. Those type of things.
Or the other one that I just, as you said that, it just dawned on me because I'm going through this torturous process of the, those consent banners.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a client that they're pretty international, but their headquarters here in British Columbia. But Quebec and California have a similar level of compliance required as GDPR, but they don't want to have the banner show up for every single one of them. So I'm going to wager that probably the banner, and you can do it that it's IP compliant. So provided that the person is in those areas, when they access the website, the banner will show up. And if they're not in that area, the banner won't show up. So I would probably wager that it's going to be the JavaScript, like pretty much does this enable, yes or no? And it's based on, oh, they're coming from Quebec. Okay, yeah, then we activate it. Oh, they're coming from BC. No, don't activate it. And that's probably how that's working to some extent.
Yeah, the use case for the JavaScript option is, as I think about it, pretty wide, and I think of it more, maybe more in a way of, um, not not in the traditional redirect way, but it's, because when I think of redirects, I think more of the 301
Yeah.
redirects where you're changing your URL structure and or pages and things like that. This is the JavaScript redirects are for a complete different purpose. It's more for like a usability UX, kind of a feel where you want certain things to show up, or certain places to be gone to on your website based on customer information or customer location, that type of thing. So I think that's
Yeah.
why I never really thought too much more about it as a redirect.
Yeah, like it's definitely one that, like, the more I kind of we've been talking about, the more I'm like, oh yeah, that probably is that. Like there's just like things that show up that, like, compliance is going to be a big one. You know, not every area is going to have the same laws, and just like the consent, so you may have some things that, like, you can't show a certain image, and you might want to remove a certain image because it won't be compliant with that area. Maybe language as well. I could imagine that you would want to have, like, we can't say these certain things in the EU that we can in the US. So we're going to make sure that if they are coming from the EU, that, take out these words. Um, like I could definitely, like, yeah, there's a bunch of like weird edge case stuff that, but yeah, I think it's just per, personalizing it to the user. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a big use case for these ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
I would
Um,
say off of that, just now that, because I think we're going to be switching over to some of the things to watch out for, right? That's where I feel we're,
good.
because,
Yeah. Well, not maybe watch out for. I don't know. Do I have a
yeah,
watch out for
yeah.
section here?
Well, one of the big ones that I ran into a lot with using Google Optimize was performance issues,
Mm,
because JavaScript takes a while to load, takes a while to run, and so the browser is going to be only able to do so much work. So don't over rely on something that uses JavaScript to do
mm.
things, and your website still be performing super well, because definitely, yeah, it can cause some issues with load speeds, especially on mobile. That's when I really noticed it.
Yeah, I was gonna move on to like maintenance, of redirects and things like, because I kind of was thinking, a 301 is a permanent redirect, right? And
Hmm.
I was thinking, like, do you just have it forever? Because at a certain point, you're gonna have so many redirects in there, which also in itself is not a great thing for Google to see that there are a ton of redirects, set up on your site. So the maintenance of the redirects and how long you should, keep a 301 redirect in there. And I think that really comes down to having something set up like Search Console where you can see, like, are people still hitting this old site? Is it basically gone from the search engine, and all people are going to the new page? Then maybe you could think about getting rid of that redirect, because the impact on your SEO or people not finding it is so minute by that time. I would definitely keep things for minimum a year
Mm,
before maybe checking on them to see. But um, I would definitely go in and keep track of what you've got set up. I've come across instances where people have had a redirect for a page to go to a new page, and then later on they've created a redirect from that other page to go to a new page, right? So now
yeah.
there's like a redirect from one old page to whatever their new page was, and then they're like they did it again. They're like, I'm going to change it again. So now they have so following things like that. I'm assuming that's more what Google's like. Hey, there's too many redirects here. I'm going from here to here to here. Like
Yeah,
settle on
yeah.
a page, settle on a page, people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it's definitely that. I was going to say that that's a big thing to watch out for is chaining your 301 redirects. Google, anything more than one, Google is not a happy camper about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another cool feature is if you get some of the ones, the tools like a redirect manager or 301 easy redirects for Shopify. All these apps all have like the same sounding name. It's so hard to like keep track of which one's which. Um, but they one thing they do that's good that you were talking about is that they do count if they get hit, like if the 3-1 redirect got triggered, so
Mm-hmm.
that way you can get a sense of like, oh, people are still getting redirected here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a way that you can keep track of that as well. So just super useful for you doing that.
Yeah, be mindful of what you're setting up for 301 and 302 redirects, and just take an audit every once in a while and make sure things haven't gotten crazy. And most of the tools, like we'll go over a couple of tools at least for WordPress. There's a plugin commonly used called Redirection. I think it's probably the most common one that people use. There's another called Simple 301 Redirects. And then obviously, if you're using Yoast or Rank Math, both of those have redirect options within them. So uh, for I guess for WordPress, like if you are using Yoast or Rank Math already, don't you might as well use the redirection features in those instead of installing a separate plugin just to do redirects. If you're not using those, you can use redirection or 301 simple 301 redirects. And the good thing about these is you can create them in your admin. You can see the stats on like how many. Actually, I think you can in some of them at least you can see the information about how many times they're still being hit and
Mm-hmm.
forwarding traffic along. But you can see them right in your dashboard, right in your admin, and maintain them easily like that. So it's really convenient to use one of these for sure.
Yeah, yeah, they're really useful. And for Shopify, I just use the easy redirects is the name of the one I use. It's never steered me wrong. Works really easily. Does the
Mhm.
same thing, and it's free. It does have a paid tier if you want, but it's not required. I've gotten everything I needed out of it with just the free tier. So,
Mhm.
uh, yeah,
Well, to wrap up on three on redirects, I hope people got some good information here. And if you're not using 301 redirects, definitely consider doing them, especially if you're doing a lot of work on your site, because it is going to, any changes you're going to make to your site where you create new pages or change things, it is going to impact your SEO. So using the redirect options is really going to save you there. And I know you'll probably harp on people as the SEO guys.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's literally the first thing we check when we're going like first, like the highest priority in any website, and this will happen with any website. If you've had your website for more than a year, I will wager money, and you've done anything on the website with like content or plugins, anything like that, you will have a 404 on your website.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may not have a ton, but like almost always every website, it's just natural that people get them, and it's not the end of the world. We just got to make sure that they're fixed and set it up a 301 redirect. And so yeah, just take a quick audit, use your Search Console, and use a free plugin, and just get started fixing this.
Even I came across this because as a web developer, I typically put a site by my business at the
Yeah,
bottom, kind of a thing. Not on all sites, but on a lot of client sites, I'll have that. And I myself changed one of my pages on my site to optimize it to be better, but then forgot, like, oh man, at the bottom of a lot of these sites, they're going now to a dead link, and so I didn't catch that for a little bit until I actually looked at my Google Console or stats. I was like, why is all these 401s? That Oh, I changed that
yeah,
page, right?
yeah. It'll happen, and yeah, especially if you're not keeping track of that stuff. And yeah, you want to keep track of that. I think also as well, some of those plugins, when you do the paid tiers, they also will do a 404 tracker. So if people hit a specific 404, you could get notified ahead of it. So it's not like you can fix it even sooner.
Yeah.
But I would definitely, yeah, just get started fixing broken links and make sure your website's nice and clean. But that is it. We are over time, and just to say the thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about redirects, or if there's anything that you have like expand on further. We're happy to answer it in the comments. We're at Cyberpunk Geek Marketing Mixer. Uh,
And if you want to join us next week, Phelan, you're going to be on with a guest, Ashley. Your
yeah,
guys' topic is ethical use of AI in your marketing
yeah,
content. Should
yeah,
be
yeah.
fun. It'll be nice to see Ashley. She was a regular for a little while with us.
Yeah. I think that she's. It should be a really exciting conversation. I know that the AI world's still growing and still figuring out the contours of it. So I think that that will be an exciting conversation.
Mm-hmm. All right. Till next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.